immersed, detached.
Yeah.
When you find yourself in the valleys, when you find yourself in the peaks, when you find yourself in the center, where do you sense your focus is? Are you immersed or are you detached? Where you find the most calm? Using the techniques that you, I'm assuming,
That's a good question.
I should ask you, I'm asking you this. It's more of a leading one, and now we're getting more into the counseling aspects of it. When you are about to walk on stage, when you walk on stage, and then when you walk off stage, is there a regimen of meditative or focus or visualization that you use?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
always.
I don't want to, you don't have to share that because everybody's got their own mojo. That being said, when you do it, are you humping yourself up or are you calming yourself down?
It's calming myself down. The way I work, it can easily spin out of control. So it's order and chaos.
So you're trying to decrease arousal for the most part.
Very much so. Yeah.
All right. And you would say that's true prep, during, and after.
Absolutely.
In this build, do you remember any breathing method that you might be using to do that? And what might that be?
Cleansing breath. Cleansing breath. That's my
go-to. Could you describe cleansing breath for me?
Cleansing breath, when I picked it up from our yoga class, and that was actually one of the breathing techniques that I brought into the kickboxing class, that was really, really helpful. It's very simple. In nose, out mouth through clenched teeth. In mouth through either pursed lips or rolled tongue, out nose. Even lengths for each breath, so same amount of time. So it's a very slow, even breathing sequence. And for me, that's become my go-to for almost any kind of activity. If it's physical, if I'm getting tired, if I'm getting winded, go to cleansing breath. It forces my heart to slow down. I get more air in the lungs. I even myself out, get a little bit of focus back. If I'm losing it, then back into what I'm doing. Same with work.
Is there any pauses or retentions or suspensions in that breathing process?
Sometimes. It depends on what I'm doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I will actually move in from the cleansing breath into the ratio breathing.
And still do the in
right,
mouth,
but
out
still
nose.
keep the sequence of in, nose, out, mouth. Something about that rhythm, right? It's as much the breathing exercise for the breath control as it is the rhythm itself, which frames how I'm looking at what I'm doing.
Is there a mantra that you're using yet?
Not so much. I haven't found what I really call a mantra.
You aren't supposed to. However, and since this is only really, it doesn't. I don't mind this. Be very wary and careful about what I'm about to teach this gentleman. These techniques were taught to me by Master Edward Martindale. They are somewhat initiative, very powerful words, and they're meant to do two things: to still statically action in a projected manner, or to provoke action in a projected manner. Okay? The first one is the word hue. So if you use the word hue on the out breath, then you will be putting out stilling energy. If you use the two compound words, Lokor Rabjun. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. They'll get it. Why use Lokor Rabjun? Lokor Rabjun. If you lose Lokor Rabjun in that sequence, Lokor Rabjun, if you use that sequence, you are going to be very much causing yin and yang. If there is stillness, you're going to make things move.
Okay.
You're going to make things happen. Okay. Your energy that would normally be the stuff that you say ramps up, it's going to ramp up out here.
Okay.
So you externalize that what you're doing. So you have to be very careful about how you do that because you have their attention. You have already got your intensity's there. You're palpable. What they say is intensity. Really, what it is, Professor, is that you're actually you're projecting your inner self.
Okay.
Okay. When somebody sees somebody naked, that's intense. Okay. No matter how you see it, especially what they're seeing is coming out of them is It's actually what they're looking at and what they're feeling is It's completely changing what they're actually perceiving. Okay. They were seeing the real you, and it's affecting them on many different levels. Hopefully the ones that they learn the best on, so they feel good about it, and they actually do. So you're putting out great energy, as far as I'm concerned. It has to be, even though I haven't witnessed it. And now these techniques will even further intensify your ability to introspectively control and then to project the power that comes from it.
Okay.
So those are two things you might use. First, try it out in a very safe area, and know that meditation is definitely a negative feedback experiential process. You have to know by, oh, don't do this, because this happens. And if you have a good teacher, it will save you from yourself and others. My thing is only use the stilling when you're dealing with students and so forth, especially if you're having an over-arousal situation, or you want them to actually, they understand this is a powerful piece that you're putting out. You're going to put it out powerfully. But in the interim, while they're reacting, you're calming them down so they can see it without all the fuzz. If you have a completely dead situation, and you need to get them moving because for some reason it's not working, and you need interaction, that's when you use the other. But you have to ensure that when you're doing this, because you have that class, forget about the mumbo jumbo, you are leading that class and they can feel your lead.
Right.
And so this will help move that direction. So your words will have added weight with a trust that where they're going will be where they want to be.
Okay. Cool.
So those are two things. The professor gave me a lot tonight. I thought I should give something to him. We spoke a lot about a lot of things, but now we're going to go into a subject that will go cross over from my communications and precision communications class into my leadership class for Dr. Judica. First was Professor Sargent's, and that was the first part for that. And this is crossing over into Professor Judica's class. The idea of communication, which we just got to talking about. If we can control our mental state, not get overzealous based on our personality traits, and we have the social environment that we're dealing with in this case, it's the classroom. We're taking this now into the one-on-ones you have with your students. You have a lot of athletes, which I know you connect with very well, and then you have individuals that are not athletes. Your own experiences, be free as much as you can share. I'd like to know how these experiences, how this training has crossed over or transferred into your ability to be more effective as a communicator on the individual level with your students.
There's I think some tie over between this answer and the previous set of questions. 70% of my students, well, 70% of all students at Grandview are athletes. And
I didn't know that.
Okay. Very, very athletically minded.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Hey, a bonus.
We get a lot of student athletes. Okay. And it's good. I mean, they work very hard both at their respective sports and in their classes, so it's very, very good that way. So in some ways, I've seen a few things in regard to the training sort of change how I get to communicate with them. Previously, I had been an athlete, but I had not actively pursued any kind of athletic or training regimen in some years. So, you could always talk about what it was like 15 years ago, right? And of course they get that and they laugh and, you share stories. I talk about, wrestling in high school and playing rugby in college and boxing and martial arts. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, we do this too. So it's fine. The ways in which it's sort of changed things this semester, the comic version of this, is that we all get to sort of collectively groan about early morning workouts, right? So everybody's getting up at 5 a.m.
and training.
Training,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we're doing, and we come into class at 8 a.m. We're like, oh my God, I hurt. You make that face, right? It's like, okay, I've been up for 3 hours already, and I'm already exhausted. Okay, let's do this. And
so you're trying to tell me, you've been sharing your experiences of your victim early.
Oh yeah, yeah. We talk. But there's reasons for that. I mean.
Is there empathy there?
There is, and one of the things, I teach rhetoric. All of my work is always comes back to this idea of rhetoric. And when you communicate with people, you look for moments of identification. You look for places where what you have and what they have meet.
Commonality.
Common ground. Something that the two of you can hold in common and use as a basis to build every other relationship you're going to have.
Understood.
And so, You know, I can come in with expertise in the field, and I can sell that to them, and I can get them to do the work. But at the end of the day, what I want is for them to work with me in a particular kind of way. So I have to find a way of meeting them where they are. And there's a variety of ways I do that. I'm very casual in class. I'm very laid back. I'm never the professor walking in with the tweed jacket and the elbow pads standing in the front of the classroom doing the lecture. I'm moving around the room. We're all on a first-name basis. That's the kind of classroom dynamic I've always had. But you add in these sort of, you know, friendly colloquialisms, these little stories about like, oh my God, this is what I did this morning for workouts, and I'm sorry, I can't lift my arms right now. You know, we get some good laughs out of this. But the other side of that, right? That's the friendly, you know, just culture, shared class culture side. The other side of that is actually the ways in which my students perceive me as a person, right? It matters to them to see somebody who actually invests in these kinds of things too. Right. I mean, it's you know, it's like the old adage, students don't like professors who talk about how much they care for students but never show up at student activities.
Understood.
The same thing is true for when students see professors who do the same kinds of things that they do. It's like, okay, we're not doing the same sport, but you care about these things. You do these things. We see that you care about fitness, that you care about training. That matters to us. And then we talk about it. We share. Although, this funny little side note, first week in October? Second week in October, I had a classroom. It's a 9 a.m. class, or 9:30 class, on Tuesday, Thursdays, and the exercise for the day had us going outside for part of what we were doing. It was an observation essay. Took the class outside, and they're all screaming about how cold it is. They're like, oh, it's cold here. And I got a bunch of students from California and Texas, so they're like, oh, it's 50 degrees outside. That's cold. So they're like huge winter jackets trying to keep warm. I'm walking around in a short sleeve knit shirt, and like, I don't feel cold. Breathing. Keeping the body temperature up.
Explain that if you invest enough time in, you should take advantage of it. I constantly go by the 72 hours of Shaolin, which says you should always keep your arms and extremities, especially your legs, warm. But the truth of the matter is I'm always hot and swollen up with energy because we do an awful lot of Taoist and Vedic breathing regimens that allow that to happen. You can look up Mantak Chia's idea behind it. He says it's like filling up a tire. As long as you're doing the exercise of filling, you'll always have the flow of air, of warm air. And if you do our exercises, we can, matter of fact, in November, late November, early December, we'll be outside in shorts doing meditation in the snow.
Nice.
Because we'll be testing our abilities, just like swimming across the lake. We're going to test and see where we're at. I did it last year, and it's time to do it on video, and we're going to do it with my brother here. But the bottom line is the professor is talking about homeostasis. Yeah. And homeostasis, you professors know what it is. Of course you do. But he's actually found a way to access the reticular activating system and maintain homeostasis even in the situation of extreme weather conditions. He can maintain his calm. Go ahead.
So, yeah, for me that was a moment where I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not cold. I got a good laugh out of that, and I started thinking, okay, maybe I'm really just much, much warmer. So that's the comic side of things. To get to the specific of the question, the interpersonal level, the ways in which I work one-on-one with students, goes back to the previous answer. In classrooms, students always perceive me in a positive way. That's, again, has to do with this sort of new degree of intensity I have, but also just my classroom manner. But in the one-on-ones, because I'm not having those peaks and valleys anymore, I have more focused attention time, and I have more students coming and seeking me out one-on-one outside of class time than I've had really in my last, let's see, I've been here, I'm going in my 5th year at Grandview.
Wow.
I have more students, and I've always had a few,
right.
But Grandview typically doesn't have a lot of students showing up for office hours. It's kind of our culture. My office hours are busy every day.
Wow.
I always have students in my office hours. That is, and maybe there's multiple ways to explain it, but I think there's probably a correlation because I feel better and differently about the work than I usually have.
Wow. I mean, there's some practical, very linear, observational ways of seeing why, based on what you've said so far. But then there's that other questionable, ephemeral, how did this happen?
Right.
Type of thing. You're trying to get your hands around. But we know, I'm trained, Professor, that communication is only 6-7% verbal. The other 93% by and large is a combination of kinetic, colloquialistic,
Right.
interactional behaviors that may or may not directly say, but more than likely actually are more closer to what you're thinking and communicating than anything. It's the basis for, we don't, even the words may say something, without those, we're really not sure whether the guy's doing it.
Right.
It's obvious that they are feeling the behavior on a different level, because they probably don't know why they're coming either. At least with regard to at least being able to quantify it, but I would suggest, and it'd be an interesting study to find out. I wish I could actually interview them. Maybe that's something I might be able to do with your permission later, as to changes they may have been seeing in you with regard to this training. Maybe that's interesting to explore later on.
We can talk about that, yeah.
With a case study group, maybe in a control group, and see that we're bringing forward. The ability for the training that you're going through, even in its infancy, I would say that you will be, with the 20 hours a week, put that together with, in a month, you're probably doing close to 90, maybe even 100 hours of training, which would put you at 3.5 years to mastery of all of this. But definitely 10,000 hours, okay, we could probably be done even sooner than that, if you don't get sick and if you continue to grow in power.
Right.
Okay, power focus. So you might be able to do something, but the bottom line is, even by next year, this time, there should be a significantly different you on many different levels.
I look forward to seeing that.
That being said, this has got to affect, if you haven't, have you noticed any reactions from your faculty members on this subject, to include peers, subordinates, or superiors?
This is one of those things that faculty, they wouldn't talk about this much, but the thing that most always shows up is, wow, you lost a lot of weight. You look good. What are you doing? And then I tell them, they ask for the detailed version of what I've been doing. And
they do ask for the details?
Some of them do, yeah.
Wow,
they're like, so how are you doing all this again? And of course some of it is, I post this on stuff on Facebook, like every geeky person. I do. Every time I keep my regimen pretty well updated on Facebook, and when I make huge sort of gains in the weight loss or in the body fat, so people ask, and so they're like, really? That's what you're doing? They're surprised, right?
Because it's not the high intensity going to the Farrell's, which is a kickboxing place.
Right.
Going to LA Fitness, what they have out in California. Going to what we have here, which is CrossFit.
CrossFit, right.
CrossFit's a big one. He is going to the Y, though.
Going to the Y.
He's going to the YMCA.
Yeah, several nights a week.
Several nights a week.
But everybody's sort of like, well, what do you mean you're not doing like ridiculously insane 5-hour cardio routines?
Right.
No, I'm not. Which is good, because I know people who love to do that, but I'm not one of those people.
Right.
So there's a lot of, that's where the curiosity comes in, and for some people just some outright confusion. And of course you get the, wait, you're doing martial arts? Wait, so you're fighting? No, that's not what we're doing. But generally speaking, people have been really positive about it. Mostly because, and there's interesting research on this, academics as a whole tend to be a very unhealthy lot.
That is
a
a
general rule. Yeah, very, very, very much so. Chronicle Higher Ed last year? It was Chronicle Higher Ed did a study last year. I'm trying to remember the author's name, but it was essentially chronicling the list and the percentages of health concerns for academics. Obviously, things like various neurological conditions, depression, anxiety, those always factor very high. But also, well, frankly, obesity is on the rise, like everywhere else in the academy. Lack of sleep. Just general stress, just massive amounts of stress. The academy is a tough place to work. You're always working under the scrutiny of peer review and 10 years of grind, publication always hanging over your head. This is the way it works. And, well, I think, if I can interpret my colleagues' words, I seem healthier and happier than I probably have in a long time. And I'm always a pretty good-natured, jovial person, but when it's work time, I'm serious.
Right.
When it's work time, there's some of that intensity again. And I think they're seeing a different version of me doing this work, probably in the same way that my students are. Although they wouldn't by nature comment on that, because Well, that would be an awkward thing. in
Also, you know, you're not
academic
giving
circles.
off a lot of, it has only been 2.5, 3 months.
Well, that's true too, yeah.
Okay, so, and that, by the way, we say that because 4 months is the drop off where people normally just quit. And, yeah, 4 months it is, 4 months, anyone quits unless the person has found a transformative exercise regimen or a transformative discipline. And it might be something we'll find out if we test the professor, we check with the professor a year from now as to whether or not this is actually a transformative discipline that he is going through. And this one is began as Western Tai Chi Chuan, and it is now called Tai Chi boxing. Taiji, which is great extremes or supreme ultimate, and then boxing, which is the reference to the pugilistic aspects of Western boxing. And even though this term has been translated by Paul Grant and and Dr. Brinkman with their books, Wu Men Sia's 81 Postures and 9 Songs of the Yang Family Traditional Tai Chi Chuan, and also Tai Chi Boxing written by Go Rong Tai Chi Boxing, Tai Chi Methods book, handbook written in 1937, and then Zhu Yushen, his book written in 1921 called the Instrumental Methods of Tai Chi Boxing, and handbook. And since they have been used before, the idea of Tai Chi boxing, the term in translation, but in the way we're practicing it, we're using it as a term that definitely says merging of Eastern and Western thoughts. We will say most of it comes from the East with regard to their refinement and cultivation. And in that sense, we are talking memetics. We're talking about a cultural transfer of information on a cultural transfer of information that's effective in pedagogy on a cognitive, affect, and kinetic level. We're doing research on that now. The professor is co-looking into this. He's actually somebody we're studying, but at the same time, we're also trying to understand it and be able to convey it in a curriculum that anyone would be able to want to approach. We have quite a few different types of people in our classes, but they not all embrace it all, and that's what we're trying to find out, what type of personalities really flock to this type of training. That being said, I do believe, I still find that the professor is definitely a, what's the word we call it, the type of personality, and oh, I can't remember it now.
From Csikszentmihalyi High?
Yes.
The autolytic personality?
Autolytic personality. That was it. We think that individuals who are chronic basically don't have a really strong physicality to them, but wish to have it and want to do it through a more cerebral and more planned, stepped, procedural way.
Yeah.
They definitely are brought to it. So I'm believing that people who are high left hemispheric and find themselves autolytic and personality trait, they have a pretty good, but it's okay, but not a strong social facilitation ethic. That's not, socialization is not a big deal with them, though they're okay with it. They could use better work in that area. Tai Chi boxing, as we are practicing it, the integration of Vedic and Taoist meditation methods integrated into a process which is focused and studied and understood as mindfulness training. That most of the neurological studies and the Western scientists are studying, basically a flow of the first aspect is, I'm sorry, I'm losing it. Visualization is object monitoring. The first part would be, I can't remember it now. I'm flowing. It's object monitoring. The second one. The first one would be some type of focused attention. Focused attention, object monitoring, affirmation, or self-talk. And then, of course, combining them all together into a nice flow that allows an individual to have a great skilling and meditative ethic regimen. And he is in the middle of studying this. I've been studying this all my life. I'm in my third decade of internal boxing. However, it is now that I'm learning to teach it in a manner which is extremely efficacious. for the Westerner. And that's it right now. That's all I really wanted to say. The communication part, Dr. Judica, you now got that part with regard to communications. I'll have more to say on that tomorrow in my paper. Dr. Sargent, you can see that we're working real hard on the communicative aspects of going into academia and how this might work. And the professor and I think that perhaps with a little more work and codification, we might be able to present these types of ideas for a community of people that might be able to help them, put a package together that helps them get past this rut and help them be better academicians, better students of academia, and better performers in that field. And right now that's what we're focused on, and hopefully it will work. Thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Oh, thanks, Professor. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for doing this.
Anytime.